Welcome to another exciting episode of LPA Presents. Today we have a guest with us best for known as Solid Snake in the Metal Gear Solid franchise. What most people don't know is that he's also a screenwriter, director, and producer. He wrote the screenplays for the first two X-Men movies and Watchmen, and now has his own TV series getting ready to come out, which I hope he can tell us more about. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Matthew.
Thank you. Now, I've come up with some questions regarding your profession that I hope you could advise people with. I'm looking forward to hearing your answers.
I'm looking forward to hearing them as well.
What can you tell me about your upcoming project?
I'm not sure which one you mean. There's a few. I have a movie that I've sold to Amazon that I can't really talk about yet, and then I have a TV show that I sold to Universal, which maybe I can talk about a little bit. So I'll just say that one is a big samurai epic. When I was 16, my family and I moved to Japan, and I went to high school in Kobe and lived in Osaka, and so I always loved Japan. And so somebody came to me with the idea for this show, these producers, and I wrote the script on spec because I loved it so much, and then Universal has just purchased it.
Is that one on IMDb known as World War III?
No. World War III was a long time ago. I mean, the show. No, that was a deal we made with Fox before Fox was bought by Disney, for a huge event miniseries, and I wrote it. And then when I handed it in, they said, "Oh, well, the Fox." We closed the Fox event miniseries department, so we're not doing that anymore. So it just sort of died, which is a shame. But it's funny because it's on my IMDb, and people ask me about it all the time, like it's such a compelling title. But unfortunately, no, that one died an ignominious death.
So pretty much like a lot of TV series tend to end up production hell.
Yeah, it's just development hell.
Mm-hmm. What inspired you to pursue this career?
What inspired me? Raiders of the Lost Ark. That was the movie that I was 12 years old and I was watching it, and it just changed my whole life. I was like, whatever they're doing, that's what I want to be doing. And so I figured acting was the way in that made the most sense to me. I always loved writing, but I couldn't figure out how to break into the business that way. Acting seemed sort of straightforward. You go in, you audition, and you get the part or you don't. So I came out to be an actor, but I was always writing the entire time, short scripts, and I had a feature when I was 22 that I tried to get set up. And that was it. It was just my love of the movies and Hollywood and the whole thing. I'd never wanted to do anything else.
Can you describe your creative process when writing a screenplay or developing a character's voice?
My creative process is I dive into the world in a very simple way. I sort of outline a movie or a show. Bit by bit, I start in with the stuff that really excites me, and then I start to flesh out the world and the action of the plot of it. And as that's occurring, the way the characters react to what's happening, to the problems that are happening, to the dangers, starts to shape their characters. Ideally, they start to come to life in front of me, and I just and then from there I just keep going over it and over it and over it, editing, re-editing, rewriting, and I compare it to, it's like in Japan, the samurai, with the way they would make their swords.
Mhm.
They would forge them, and then they would fold the metal over again, and then melt it, and then fold it again, and they do that 1,000 times, and then that makes the sword extremely strong. And that's sort of like rewriting a screenplay. You have something that's just sort of a simple, you know, hunk of steel, and you just keep honing it and honing it and honing it, and you keep like you come up with a great idea for the ending, and then you realize, okay, so now I have to go back and set that up through act one, act two, act
Mhm.
three. And so it's just that process of just continually adding detail and adding character and adding uh, anything that propels the action forward until you've got something that you feel is worth reading.
I'll definitely have to take that to heart when I'm working on my screenplays.
Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, especially when you're not if you're not getting paid for it, it's a huge amount of work. And along the way, like I'm writing a movie for myself to direct right now because it's the strike. So I'm just writing for myself.
Hmm.
And and yesterday I really love this idea, but I was like, it's just not coming together. It's just not interesting. As I couldn't really crack it. And then last night at 2:30 in the morning, it just my brain broke open. I was like, oh, it's this and this and I just wrote down page after page after page of notes and it just sort of cracked. So when you're writing your own screenplays, don't get down on yourself and say,
Hmm.
oh, this isn't working or whatever. I mean, it might not be working. It might not be great yet, but if you keep at it and you keep, sort of looking at different aspects and keep working on it, it can break open and become something amazing. So don't let your self-doubt stop you along the way.
I've actually complicated the process. I'll write the screenplay, go back, rewrite my novel, and then go back and rewrite the screenplay based off the novel.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good way to do it because essentially the novel is outlining your world.
Hmm.
So yeah, no, I think that's a really good way to do it. Plus, it also breaks up the monotony of just writing screenplay or just writing prose. It's nice to be able to sort of switch back and forth for your brain.
Hmm. What do you think are the most important elements of a successful screenplay?
Well, David Mamet said there's only one rule: don't be boring. So it has to be engaging. It has to raise questions in the audience's mind that they just need to know the answers to. Like that's what keeps them coming back. Um, if you look at Usual Suspects, the question is who is Kaiser Soze? Somebody in this group is not who they say they are, and so you want to so you're motivated to want to watch to the end of the story. Um, Interesting characters, which means people that jump off the page, roles that would be really fun for big actors to play. You have to think about that. Uh, well, yeah. So I was going to talk about somebody else's project, but I don't want to do that. And yeah, you just have to tell a good story. If you can tell a really engaging joke, you can write a screenplay probably. Same structure.
Okay. I've got one actress that I interviewed before who's actually been instrumental in trying to push me to being a better writer.
Oh, well, great.
So,
Well, I mean, it's a lifelong journey. You have to push yourself, and
mhm.
you can always be better. And what you do is you study the writers you love. Like if you love Steve Zalian, Richard LeGravenez, you get their scripts and read how they do it. Figure out how Jim Cameron tells a story. You know,
Mhm.
because people always write him off, but just pretty much every single time, you just get drawn into those movies, and he's just a magnetic storyteller. So and great, and it's so specifically tailored for the screen. So yeah, just study people you love.
I've been told my work has no parallel to it.
Well, is that good?
In some aspects, I actually had to go back and rewrite the beginning because they said there's no real world connection to it.
Hmm. Okay, thank you. Sorry, my wife is heading out.
How do you approach collaborating with other writers, directors, or actors on a project?
Um, Depends on the project. Depends on what they bring me. So if a writer brings me a script and I think, and it's all just my opinion, if I think it's halfway good, then I'll say, okay, look, we've got a lot of work to do. If I decide I need to rewrite it myself, like sometimes somebody will bring you a great idea for a movie, but the movie isn't terribly well written.
Mhm.
Those sorts of things, I'll say, well, look, I would rather write this myself. Sometimes I'll write it with the writer, or sometimes, like right now, I'm overseeing a movie where I thought the script was really good, but it was a brand new writer, and so there were certain things in it where I was like, they're never going to make it if it goes this way, or if you say this or this line of dialogue or whatever. So I gave a huge amount of notes, just sort of adjusting, but I wanted the script to be in the original writer's voice. I didn't want it to be in my voice.
Right.
So, and I felt like this writer was really talented, just not terribly experienced. So,
Mhm.
so what I did there was I acted as like a studio exec would, or like a producer would, to say, okay, this script has great opportunities to it, but let's really shape it, let's really hone it, and make sure that it's great. But in the end, I really wanted the original writer, whose name is Lee Ehlers, to get sole credit on the movie, because it's his movie. He made it up and really executed it beautifully. So it all depends on what I've been brought, and how viable I can see the project being.
And those kind of feedbacks are actually great for people like me. I've been entering into different competitions. I've won one, got nominated for another, and ended up honorable mention in one of the biggest ones.
Nice, nicely done.
Thank you.
That's great.
What do you think sets your work apart from others?
I don't know. I mean, to the extent that my work is set apart, I would say, I have a specific sense of humor. I have a specific uh, um, I have a specific viewpoint on the
Mhm.
world. Like, there are things that I want people to know, or there are things that I want people to get out of anything that I write, that empowers them or allows them to see the world in a different way, or you know whatever I can express to them out of my personal philosophy that I think is worthwhile. I'm extremely good at writing action set pieces that demonstrate character, that tell you who the lead character is, not just a fight, not just um, a punch up, but but that the action sequences tell you as much about the character as the dialogue, if not more.
Mhm.
So if you look at, like, um, in X2, uh, the attack on the X Mansion, where Wolverine is the only one left to watch the children, that's a great demonstration of just who that guy is,
Mhm.
and it's one of my favorite, scenes I've ever written. Um, so I'm pretty, I think I'm pretty good at those sorts of things.
I mean, I actually thoroughly enjoyed all three films that you screenwrote.
Oh, thank you.
Can you discuss any challenges or obstacles that you faced in your career and how you've overcome them?
Um, well, the obstacle to Hollywood is, especially when you're writing a big, expensive movie, um, is getting them to pay for it. So, these movies are hugely expensive and they want to make them, but it just takes forever to get them to agree. So, uh, so I mean, really, you have to have a number of different projects. I always have 6 to 8 different projects going at once, because you never know when one's going to pay off, when it's going to get made, when it's going to die,
Mhm.
and a lot of them just die. So, I think the success. of being a working screenwriter is not necessarily just getting your films made. It's also being able to survive during the times when your films are not being made. So
Yeah.
So I think one of the ways I deal with that is by working myself to death and having too much on my brain at all times, and that provides me the life to which I've become accustomed.
So then me having 14 different concepts to work with at any given time is pretty standard.
It should be. I don't think it is standard. I think a lot of writers can't keep more than 2 or 3 stories in their head at one time, and if that's the way you are, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to survive. The worst is when people put years and years into one screenplay, and then they get it made, and then they're like, okay, what's next? And they don't have anything ready. So you see a lot of great first movies, and then a lot of terrible subsequent movies.
Mm-hmm.
So you got it. So it's better to have 14 going at once. Don't beat yourself up over it. Just make sure you put in the time to make sure that each one is great before you send it out.
That's where feedback is always useful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to have people that you trust giving you their opinions, and that's not easy to find. A lot of times, people, writer friends, will judge your work based on their own bitterness or whatever, and they won't give you why did he finish a script and I can't, and then they'll just crap all over you, and that's not good feedback.
Yeah.
You need supportive people who know what they're doing to look at it and say, yeah, it's good, but could be better here, could be better here, whatever.
How do you balance creative freedom with adhering to a project's specific requirements or expectations?
Well, being a screenwriter is very different from being a novelist. A novelist can just make up their own world. They can take the story in any direction they want. A screenwriter has to work with 200 other professionals to execute the final movie, and that includes the director and the studio, the producers, the actors, all these people. Sorry, I'm picking up my dog. That's my little dog. So, your creative freedom is tied up in their creative freedom, and also it's not necessarily freedom in that there are things screenwriters have to do that novelists don't have to do. So, for example, you can't just describe a million universes exploding all at once because how do you shoot that? Like, it's fine on the page, but visually, like, what are you supposed to point the camera at? So there are things that you'll write that the director will say, I don't know how to shoot that, or there are things you'll write that the lead actor says, well, I don't want to do that. I was just writing a movie with a big star, and we have scenes where he's younger, and I was like, they could just youthify you in the computer. He's like, yeah, I won't do that. I won't play anything but my age. So then I had to rewrite the story to fit that. So you don't have ultimate freedom per se, but it is a really fun process and an important skill for a screenwriter to develop, to be able to take other people's limitations and still execute the story in a way that's really exciting for you and really engaging for you. And a lot of times those limitations or those new ideas or whatever will just make the thing cooler. And, if you're the type of writer who just goes, no, we can't change that, we can't change anything, then you'll never make it. Like, it's just, you could be a novelist that way.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, you've got editors, you've got people that will want to give you creative advice, and in movie making, you just have to roll with it. But like I say, it's really fun when when you've got great partners and they're coming up with these amazing ideas, or they're coming up with some limitation that just makes you go, oh my God, you know how we could do it? It's, like this and this and this.
Mhm.
And it's those moments that are really fun, sort of solving it. It's more like putting together a huge erector set puzzle than it is just writing a story.
Yeah, I don't expect any of my screenplays to be as direct. I expect someone's going to say, "What if we did this?"
They always will. They always will. And you want that. You want a great director to come in and take your story and make it even more than it could be.
Mhm.
And great directors will do that. So,
Which of your past projects are you most proud of, and why?
I'm proud of all of them to varying degrees. I just, it's just really nice when something gets made and
Mhm.
people see it. I've had 4 movies open at #1 around the world, and that's pretty gratifying. But I would say I think X-Men 2 is the movie that came out the best of the things that I worked on. And that's not to deride the others. I love them all, um, but that one, there's a certain magic alchemy that has to happen when you're making a movie to make it truly great. And that one, the crew, the cast, everybody knew what we were doing in a way we didn't on the first X-Men, and they gave us a lot more money, and we were able to, really execute it in a way that was very, very satisfying. And the goal for us on that movie was to make a sequel that was even better than the first one. So we looked at the great sequels. We really modeled it after Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan, Terminator 2. Looked at Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers, and anything where the sequel was amazing. We tried to emulate that, and I to a certain extent, I think we pulled that off.
And I gotta wonder how much of that was actually taken from the comics.
X-Men 2.
Hmm.
Um, well, I originally started basing it on the graphic novel God Loves, Man Kills. There's Stryker in the book is an evangelical preacher. We made him the guy who turned Wolverine into Wolverine, basically, into Weapon X. So we sort of tied those stories together. But in the book, Stryker has had a son who was a mutant, and he killed him in the movie. He's a mutant who can create these illusions, which that character Jason was taken from Jason Wingard from the Dark Phoenix saga. So there's a lot of different elements that we took from the comic books that I had read growing up, and repurposed them into one story for X-Men 2. But then, once those elements were set up, we sort of wrote our own story. So it's a pretty comprehensive adaptation, I think, of the X-Men world, not necessarily just one story.
Okay. What have you learned about the entertainment industry throughout your career, and how have you applied those lessons to your work?
What have I learned? I've learned studio execs aren't trying to ruin your movie, even though sometimes they do. I've learned that reputation is everything. Um, you can't be an arrogant dick, especially in this day and age. I used to think, not that I was an arrogant dick, but I used to think, you really had to force your way through the doors to get in, and to a certain extent you do, but it's very corporate now, and so you have to learn. I learned that business speak is actually a language you have to learn. You have to be able to communicate with these people on the level that they're communicating, so that they don't feel you're just wasting their money, or you're some artist that's just doesn't care about their return on their investment. I've learned you have to be extremely thick-skinned and be able to survive bad reviews, bad notes, people telling you your writing sucks or whatever. But at the same time, you have to retain this sort of emotionally available soul to be able to write people well, to write stories well. So it's a tough balance. You still have to be sensitive, but at the same time, you can't let your sensitivity destroy you when people are being unkind to your work.
Last bad review I got, I wondered if the person even read my work at all, because they said it was nothing but the Lion King saga retold.
Right.
Which,
what was that, for like a screenplay competition or something?
No, it was for my novel Shadow Legacy, which I'm turning into a TV series.
Oh, okay. Who was it? I mean, you don't have to say who it was, but what was their job?
Just some random person on Amazon.
Oh, well, fuck them. Yeah, you can't. You can't take that stuff serious. I mean, it hurts. It's it really hurt your feelings, and people. I'm pretty laid back on the internet, but there's certain things people say that really hurt my feelings. But there's no point in arguing with each rando weirdo on the internet. And you'll also get people, from screenplay competitions, I'm sure, that have like misjudged your work or barely read it, and you have to think like, who are these people anyway? Like what makes them authorities on anything? You just can't take it too personally. That's all I'm saying.
Last review I got said it was more like Game of Thrones than anything else, and it needed to be longer.
Oh, that's good. That's good. They want more.
What advice would you give to aspiring screenwriters, voice actors, or directors? I plan on being an auteur director myself.
What advice would I give? Well, I mean, just do things that you love. Make sure that whatever projects you're working on, that they ignite your fire in a way that is unique to you. That make sure you're telling stories or playing characters or picking up projects to direct that you just feel like, I can tell this story in a unique way that nobody else can. And if you're feeling that fire, that's what will carry you through. And ideally, that's what will make it good in the end. I think that part of the reason people respond to Solid Snake, my portrayal of Snake or Big Boss or whatever, is because I love it so much. I love telling those stories, and I love being that guy. And I think you can feel that fire in my voice, and so the real key to art is whatever you're feeling most intensely, ideally, is what the audience will feel experiencing your work. So the fire is everything.
Definitely something to look forward to when I'm finished with my work.
Also, that also plays into, so you finish your screenplay, you want to go out and direct it, that fire is instrumental in selling it. Like, you have to be able to go in and you have to tell the story in a way that is so engaging, and so you're so fired up just telling the story in the room that they can see the movie in their heads and they go, great, here's $20 million, go make your movie, or what have you. So that's the other side of screenwriting that's really difficult. It's like, you could be the greatest writer in the world, but if you want to make a movie, you have to be one of the greatest salespeople in the world, and those are very different skills. And I was very lucky in that I was acting since I was 9 years old, so I'm very good at going into a room and engaging people and getting them to be fired up by the story I'm telling, and I can do the voices, and I can, when I do a pitch, it's a show. It's like a one-man show, and by the end, hopefully they feel like they've experienced the movie. So that's not a skill people that writers are typically training themselves for, but you have to. If you want to make a movie and you want people to give you millions of dollars to make it, you got to be able to sell them in the room. And so that's another aspect of it that it doesn't occur to people till it's too late.
See, I've seen some of that excitement come from people I've pitched to before. It's just I'm still a bit of an amateur with it, that I can't grasp what I need to yet.
It just comes from practice. It just comes from the phrase, you fake it till you make it.
Yes.
They tell you that all the time as a young actor. You have to go into a room and express such confidence in yourself and in what you're doing that you inspire confidence in others. And for people that are for 22-year-old actors, that's very difficult. People don't necessarily have that much confidence in themselves. But what you have to do is you have to figure out the role you're playing when you pitch a movie. Mm-hmm. So the role I'm playing is, well, now I'm an experienced writer. I've got a track record. My movies have made a bunch of money. So it's easier for me to I come in with that history. If you don't come in with that history, you have to come in being a guy who is full of ideas and creative fire that they can harness to make money in a way they haven't before. You're telling stories that are uniquely you, and you just have to make sure that you portray confidence and love for what you're doing, and enthusiasm for the story you're telling. Even if you're not feeling that per se, even if you're terribly nervous or it's crushing you or whatever, you just gotta, figure out how to write a pitch, like a movie pitch, 10, 12 pages, and you could probably find pitch formats on Google. And just run it and run it and run it and come up with little jokes that you can pretend you came up with at the spur of the moment. Develop this role of the confident auteur screenwriter.
Mm-hmm.
He's been canceled now, but the director of X-Men, Bryan Singer, there's a great story on the Usual Suspects DVD. So he met with Stephen Baldwin, who was, played McManus in Usual Suspects. And Stephen Baldwin was Bryan Singer looked probably 18 years old, and had never done a big movie before. And so Stephen Baldwin comes in and he gives this speech. He goes, "Look, here's how I do it. I come in, I do, I've got a few choices I've made as an actor. I do them, and we move on. I just, I like to do it the way I like to do it, and then I don't like a lot of direction or whatever." And Bryan just listened to him and then said, "Okay, are you finished? You'll do the lines the way I tell you to do them, or you can be in a different movie. Is that clear?" And Baldwin goes, "Which I think is exactly what I needed to hear as an actor." It's but just the sheer balls of this kid just telling this experienced actor, no, that's not how directing works. I'm the director. I'll tell you how to do it. And then, but that gives the actor confidence that you know what you're doing.
Okay.
I mean, again, you can't be a dick that anymore, but you do have to be able to say, it needs to be this way. You also need to listen to your actor. If your actor says, "Look, this line doesn't make any sense," you have to be able to go, "Yeah, you're right. What can we do to change it or whatever?" But you always, especially if you're going to be an auteur director, you always have to carry with you the confidence that you have the story in hand. You know what you're doing. You know how you're going to execute this. You know when it's right. You know when it's wrong. And, you can express those things in a nice way, but everyone will feel a lot more confident in you if you are confident in yourself.
Okay. That's definitely food for thought. Now, how do you stay up to date and relevant in an ever-evolving industry?
That's a very good question. Technology is moving so fast. We got AI, we've got, streaming, we've got, the business is constantly changing and is very different from when I first came into it. But people confuse advances in technology with changes in storytelling. I think storytelling is universal. It doesn't change. The ways in which we approach, and the ways in which we execute it might change. The special effects might change, things like that. But if you hold true to the basic tenets of storytelling, I don't let myself get freaked out by new technology or new changes in the business. I just stick to what I do, which is hopefully telling a great story, hopefully being able to, take a book and adapt it in a way that's super filmic and will be successful at the box office. And if you do that, the changes, be aware of what's changing, be aware of how your business is changing. But to quote Bruce Lee, just be like water, just be a good storyteller, deal with the changes as they come in, and don't let it rattle you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you describe any notable differences or similarities in your creative approach to screenwriting versus directing?
Well, there's a lot of differences. I mean, it's the thing I didn't realize about directing when I first started writing is that, you can make up anything on the page. Again, you have to be able to shoot it as a director. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to, you have to, in a novel, you can write in thoughts. In a screenplay, you have to write in pictures, in filmable pictures. Mm-hmm. I also didn't realize how the reality of the camera can make something look ridiculous so fast. So, for example, when we were putting together the look of the X-Men, like particularly like Mystique, the initial executions for Mystique just didn't work and looked ridiculous, and trying to do Wolverine's hair, you're like, well, it's Wolverine. You look at him in the comic book and he's got these crazy sort of double cowlicks and this weird horned beard, mutton chops, and it looks really cool in the comic book, but you put it on a person and it really looks stupid. Like, it takes, you don't realize you're just photographing a person with this weird haircut, and suddenly what looks cool in the comic looks ridiculous on film. So, a director really has to be hyper aware of what is going to look stupid on film, because a lot of stuff does, and it's a skill you really need to hone. Like if you look at like a bad, I won't say bad, but if you look at like a really campy horror movie or whatever, it's something that's so ridiculous that you just laugh all the way through it. Well, they didn't mean for you to laugh. It's just for whatever reason the physical effects just looked ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so an example would be when you first see the back of Darth Vader's head when he's in Empire, right? And you see him without his helmet. It's like somebody was watching it with their kid, and they pointed at his head and went, "Peach ice cream," like this. And it's like, the Darth Vader's head works pretty much, for people, they look at it and they're like, oh, that's really disturbing or whatever. But some people look at it and go, peach ice cream, and it's like, well, you might want to have thought about that before you executed the thing. It's not a great example because that effect does work. It's just, but it's a good example from the perspective of you don't want to talk yourself into thinking an effect works when it doesn't. Mm-hmm. If you're on set and you're like, some kid in the audience is going to think that looks like a pile of crap, then you better deal with it on the day, or even better, you better have dealt with it in the design process. So so it's just a very different. So directing brain and screenwriting brain are two different things. Screenwriting brain, you can go nuts, you can create a huge world, you can do all these things. Directing brain, you have to figure out how to execute it, how to shoot it, and not make it look stupid.
Of course, isn't that what storyboards are for, or to try and help?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, well, storyboards help you figure out the progression of the action, progression of the scene, what lenses you're going to use, and so on and so forth. What I'm talking about is production design, effects design, all of it. And as a director, you have to know about music, you have to know about color, you have to know about sound, you know, human emotion. You're like, I mean, it taxes every single one of your abilities as an artist, so yeah, storyboards can help, previs can help, and then just testing of effects of you know, everything. I mean, you know, just even basic makeup for your actors. You do makeup tests and you know, photography tests, and it's all about preparation and doing massive preparation, and along the way being honest with yourself to say, is this good, or am I just being nice to the creature effects people, for example? You know, it's like they've worked really hard. Well, maybe they worked really hard, but it's not working yet, you know, and it needs to be redone. And so yeah, directing is no joke. I mean, none of it is. It's and that's another thing you need to know. It's like, I thought making a movie would be super fun and everybody's just having a blast. You know, you're making an X-Men movie, everybody's just having a blast. No, it's stressful. It's horrible. You know, the days are difficult to get. The studio's freaking out about their money. The actors are upset about something. You know, you know, you can't just go into it thinking it's going to be fun and games, because it ain't. Sometimes it is, and sometimes you do really fun things, but it's a grueling job. What's fun is when you're done and the movie works and you go. There's one night where it's really fun, and that's where you go to the Chinese theater for the premiere of your movie, and you don't have to do anything else, and everybody loves it. That's your night of fun, really. And then on to the next epic slog.
I plan on doing a lot of work with my animation studio. I know it's not going to all be fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun life in general. It's a cooler way to live your life than any other way, I think. But it is just massive work and stress and difficulty as well, especially animation. Animation is a huge amount of work.
How do you incorporate feedback or criticism into your work?
I don't take it personally. If something's not working for, this is something I had to learn. If something's not working for somebody, and I respect their opinion, like again, somebody, just some jerk on the street, you know, and it says, "Oh, your movie was no good because of this." I'm like, well, you go write a movie then. You know, it doesn't just rolls off of me. But if somebody I respect looks at a scene and says, you know, I don't think this is working, or maybe you should do this, or maybe you should do that, you know, you have to be honest with yourself and go, you can't, I mean, sometimes you can just say, no, it is working, it's fine, but you really want to make sure you've looked at it honestly and said, could it be better? Are they right? If they are right, how do I fix it? And usually, you know, if you're honest with yourself and you take your ego out of it, you take your hurt feelings out of it, because that's meaningless. They'll just get in your way. You'll come up with, you know, I mean, you train yourself to come up with better solutions. How do I make it better? How do I make every scene better? You know, we're 2 weeks from shooting the scene and it's been the same way for a year. How can I break it open? How can I get something more out of this? You know, how do I get a better, emotional response out of the audience? How do I surprise them in a way that they didn't
Mhm.
see coming? So yeah, so you always want to be open to feedback and criticism that's coming from an honest place, an honest and professional place.
Novel writing is no different. I mean, there's times where
True. Yeah.
you may think a certain sentence structure will work. Come to find out, it's not working. You need the way you need it to, and you need to rethink how to write it.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. Yeah, that's what rewriting is for. You might have loved it when you were writing it the first time through, but it might not be clear enough. It might not be, or you might have said something that makes the audience think one thing when you need them to think another thing. And so yeah, you always have to be. You always, when you're writing the first draft, you just dive in and you write whatever you want, and
Hmm.
nobody's going to see your first draft. So you can put in bad dialogue, you can put in, slug lines for scenes, you could, do whatever, or you can just sort of write a scene you think is going to be boring, just the boring way. Then when you're writing with your rewriting brain, then you have to be ruthless and say, this scene could be better. This scene doesn't need to be in it. This character is not making any sense. Like the character does one thing here and something completely out of character over here. It's just two different brains you have to approach on the first draft and the second draft.
But how do you balance multiple roles on a single project?
What do you mean? Like writing
Like
multiple roles or playing multiple?
writing, directing,
Oh,
acting.
um, well, I try not to act in projects I'm directing because I think that's weird.
Yeah.
Um, so I've never done that. Um, you have to define your headspace and your responsibilities for each role. So if I'm writing and directing and producing a project, every element or obstacle that comes up, I have to say, am I dealing with this with my writing brain, with my directing brain, with my producing brain? Are we in the writing process? If we're in the writing process, then the screenwriter's response is this. If we're in the directing process, then the director's process is, okay, to execute this, we need these props. We need this. We're going to need two cameras. We're going to need, whatever the practical logistics are. If it's my producer brain, it's like, okay, how do we get the same giant set piece in and make it cost half as much? You
Hmm.
know, um, so it's just a matter of building up experience in all of these different roles, and then knowing when to switch your perspective and what the requirements of each job are.
Okay. I definitely have to take that in consideration too. What do you hope audiences take away from your work?
Uh, I hope that they are entertained. I hope that they find characters that they love. I hope that they get a different perspective on the world that helps them get through tough times, that helps them understand how to deal with difficulty and how to deal with when the world is just horrible to you.
Hmm.
I hope that people are inspired to be better people, or at least wiser people. Um, and that's kind of lofty, but that's what I hope they get out of it. At a base level, I just hope they have fun and that the story takes them away and makes them, gives them something worthwhile to think about.
Yeah, that's something I look forward to in my project is not only entertaining people, but also letting people experience something new that maybe they themselves would not understand.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You're giving them a new perspective, allowing them to see outside themselves.
Now, lastly, I have like three questions from a couple Twitch and Twitter users.
Hmm.
Okay. First question comes from Mr. Gian Petra on Twitter and Twitch. What is your favorite Keyblade in Kingdom Hearts?
I hate to say it, I've never played Kingdom Hearts, so I couldn't say.
He's a good friend of mine that loves your acting, but is also a Kingdom Hearts fan, and he wanted to know. But
I literally last night I just got an Xbox S, and I just looked at the trailer for I believe it was Kingdom Hearts 4. Just came out. Is that true?
Kingdom Hearts 4 is still in development.
Oh, okay. Then maybe it's not. That's a real-time strategy game. Is that correct?
No, it's a hack and slash RPG.
Oh, okay. Well, then I know nothing. I apologize. I've never played Kingdom Hearts. But whatever your friend's favorite is, that's probably my favorite too.
Okay. Next question comes from a screenwriter on Twitch under the handle Majin Buu. He wants to know what your experience was in the writing room for Warrior Nun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is my show Warrior Nun that I worked on for Netflix. The experience was amazing. I had never worked in a writer's room before. I'd always just been a movie writer. So I've always just been locked in my own office. And I thought maybe I'd be too crazy to work with other people at that point. But I got into the room. Simon Barry, the creator, had put together just the greatest group of writers. Super nice people, extremely talented, and the experience was amazing. We had to build this whole world, multiple characters and all these things. And it was so great because I didn't have to make it all up myself. There were other people in the room. I could say, I feel like what if there was like this situation and, but then we'd need like a rookie character or whatever. And then people would just start saying, oh, the rookie character could be like, we'll call her Camilla and we'll do this and we'll do that. And it'd be really fun if she was sort of small and meek, but anytime she, gets into battle, she's always got like 2 giant automatic weapons or whatever. All these things came together and it was an amazing process. And what was nice about it was there were things that the writers would come up with that I would have never come up with, or that directions I wouldn't necessarily have gone instinctively, but it didn't belong to me. It belonged to everyone. So it was kind of cool to just go, yeah, I wouldn't have done it that way, but that's really cool. Let's make it amazing, and came up with something that wasn't entirely my voice. It was that I was just one of the voices involved. It was a very cool process. So I'm really looking forward to having my own writers' rooms and bringing in super talented people and just hearing what they have to say. It's in a lot of ways, it was more fun than just writing a movie on your own in many, many ways.
I could use a writer's room of my own. I will write the script.
We all could, yeah.
I could write the script, but because I don't know the first thing about actual scripting, my pros are lacking. So maybe just having someone who knows about that could actually point me in the right direction.
Right. Well, if it's a movie, that's where your creative partners come in. That's where your producer comes in. That's where your director comes in. That's where your studio executives come in. People are all pulling to make the best movie possible, and sometimes they're not great at it, but a lot of times you get really smart people who can help you define the things that aren't necessarily your strong suit, and you learn from them, and you build up your talents in different aspects of your writing with each project.
Okay. And lastly comes from one of my Twitch watchers, Liam Your Gamer. He asks what your favorite X-Men character is.
Well, I love them all, but Wolverine is the key character. Everybody loves Wolverine. Wolverine is just an unchained, unstoppable badass who doesn't follow the rules, and there's really not a single person on the planet that doesn't love that type of character. In fact, I'm always looking for the Wolverine in other shows. There's always some badass who doesn't follow the rules, and I'm like, oh, that's the Wolverine. But that said, when I was a boy, when we were 12 years old and my buddies and I would play X-Men, I was always Cyclops. So, Cyclops doesn't get as much love as he should because he does follow the rules. He's the guy who has to lead the team, has to be responsible. That's not as much fun, but I've always respected Cyclops, and that's why in the movies I've worked on, he gets a good, solid character arc. And in the movies I haven't worked on, they usually just waste him, or he gets killed, or disrespected, or whatever. So I have a personal love for Cyclops.
I'd actually have to say that my favorite is not a true X-Man, though he's worked with him before. Deadpool. Well,
again, and Deadpool is very similar to the Wolverine character in that he follows no rules. He's just a lot funnier about it. So, no, Deadpool. I love Deadpool. Oh my God, Deadpool 2 is one of the funniest movies I've ever seen in my entire life. It's fantastic. And I count him. He doesn't count himself as an X-Man, but I count him as an X-Man.
Well, that's all the questions I have for you today. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just want to say to you and to anybody listening who's interested in this career to love the journey and be prepared for the heartaches of it, to persevere and not let anything stop you.
Okay. Well, it was wonderful to spend time with you. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule.
It's my pleasure. I'm going to go picket one of the studios now and spend the rest of the day trying to get better wages for the writers. So thank you for having me on. The pleasure was all mine, and I wish you all success with your novel and with your writing and with your directing.
Thank you. If you want to know more about becoming an actor, screenwriter, director, or any part of the film industry, as well as an author, please tune into LPA Presents each month. We provide interviews with all persons in the industry and ask them questions to better understand the inner workings behind the scenes. Until next time, stay tuned.